Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a lamb with a red barn in the background. I call this painting Gentle Barn. A lot of requests for a sheep in the past few months, so this is my sheep painting tutorial. I did this twice. I did one on a 9x12 and then one on an 11x14, so these paintings can be done on different sized canvases. This tutorial does utilize a traceable. That's going to help you out with the lamb drawing, which is kind of tricky, so I have the traceable for that. And I'm going to go over the brushes that I used. So these are the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes, 4 round, 3/4 inch flat brush. I used a 12 bright brush. This is a Royal and Langnickel Majestic brush, and it's a flat brush that's about a 1/2 inch wide. For the colors, I used yellow oxide, light blue permanent, Cad Red Deep Hue, medium magenta, titanium white, Hooker's Green Hue permanent, and brilliant yellow green, and Mars black. Of course, these colors can be substituted to use any colors that you have available. And as mentioned earlier, I will be using the tracer for this demonstration. So we're going to go ahead and print this out. This one is printed out as the 11x14 inch size, but I also have a 9x12 if you want to use that. And so this one's the 11x14. And I'm going to position it so the lamb is not center in the canvas. In fact, there's 2 inches of space on the left side and 4 inches of space on the right side. And I'm just going to position it so the bottom of that drawing lines up with the bottom edge of the canvas. And there's a sheet of graphite paper below the tracer. And in this video, it's going to show you how this works. A lot of questions lately about the tracers. And the simplest way to do this is just to purchase a piece of graphite paper. This one was bought on Amazon. I believe you can get them at Michael's and other craft stores. A very small investment because you can use this sheet over and over again. I've only had to buy a pack of these one time and I just reuse them. Relatively cheap. You can get them for under $5. And you just want to place it so the shiny part of it is down, and when you trace, so this is just a pencil that I'm tracing the lines with, and it's pressing those lines and it's getting that onto the canvas. That's basically how it works. Some of these are labeled as carbon paper, some are labeled as graphite paper. Both of them work the same. I find the graphite paper one erases better. The carbon does not erase, so if you're worried about erasing, you can kind of choose which one you want to do. For the most part, it's not going to show on the painting. When we're done, we're not going to see any of our lines because those lines are going to be painted over. If you are not able to buy graphite paper, another thing you can do is you can scribble pencil on the back of your tracer and then trace it, and it works almost the same way. You may have to put a lot of pencil on there for it to show up really well, but that also works. And it's best if you press firmly and you trace flat on the table. So you don't want to be tracing this on an easel. It wouldn't work as well. Tracing it flat on the table. So I'm just tracing all of these lines. You can fast forward this or press pause as needed. And when you're done, just lift pieces off and you have your drawing on the canvas. I'm going to hand draw the horizon line and the barn. So these are very, very simple. We're going to find the very center of the painting. So the center, if you want to measure where the exact center is, go ahead, but I'm just going to estimate where the center is. So we're doing this. This is called the horizon line. It's the line where the end of that land meets. The barn is going to be on top of that line. It's just a long, wavy line stretched from left to right. We go behind the sheep, so the line ends up being just under the right ear, a little bit over the bottom part of the left ear. And then we want to draw the barn. So you're going to need a ruler for this. I highly recommend you use a ruler or a straight edge. And we just want to do the far left vertical side of that barn. We're going to place our ruler. So I am at maybe 3 3/4 inches from the right of the canvas, just under 4 inches. And draw a vertical line from the horizon line all the way to the top edge of the canvas. And then we'll do the roof. So sketch out a diagonal line that goes in from about 1 3/4 inches or 1.5 inches from the right. And I throw these measurements out there just to help you, but they don't have to be exact. And just do a diagonal line from that down. So you want to go past your vertical line a little bit and then do like a little tiny horizontal line that connects back to that vertical line. If you want the measurement of that diagonal line, it's about 3.5 inches long. Then we can sketch the barn door. So our barn's a little tricky because it's not the full barn, it's cut off. We only see the side of it. But we can see, you can kind of estimate where that center of the barn is. But I'm doing the barn door. And the width of the barn door is about 1.5 inches. Height of the barn door is probably 1 3/4 high. And then again, those measurements do not have to be exact. You can just kind of sketch this sort of rectangular shape. And there's going to be kind of framing on the door. And I do a little X. We can see the full barn over here, the one on the left, but the one on the right is kind of cut off. I'm just kind of sketching those X's. The sad thing about this drawing is we're going to have to end up painting over it, but it kind of helps get an idea of what it's going to look like in the end. So that's why I'm drawing it anyway. And then our top window, that bottom line of that top window lines up with that kind of horizontal line of the roof on the left. Just kind of sketching a rectangular shape. Again, this is also going to be painted over, but we can paint it out again later. And then the last thing we're going to do, this one is very, very easy. We're going to draw the bush line. So there's a whole bunch of bush shrubbery in the background above the horizon line. So we're going to kind of just draw an uneven, very wavy line that goes from the left, it kind of dips down, and it kind of goes up. You can see a little bit over here. The sheep's head looks like it's part of the bushes right now. The height of the bushes, the highest peak is about 2.5 inches if you want to use that measurement. But that is it for the drawing portion. We are going to move along and we're going to start painting section by section of this, starting with the sky. So let's load our palette with light blue permanent and titanium white. Again, you can use whatever colors you have available. So if you have a different light blue that's labeled with a different name, you can use that one. Load your 3/4 flat brush into the water, kind of tap it dry, and we're going to load equal amounts of blue and white on our brush. The goal with this sky is to do the sky with diagonal strokes. So when we're painting, we're taking our brush and we're painting diagonally. We want the sky to be darker towards the top with a little bit of light. So it's going to get lighter towards the bottom. So I'm doing this sort of row by row. So starting at the top, working kind of from the left to the right. And then the second row, I'm going to add more white to my brush. So when I'm loading, I'm pretty much only grabbing white at this point, although I might grab a little bit of blue if it ends up being too bright, too light. Just kind of blend that up into our darker blue areas. So you can see that helps get the sky to be lighter. It does not have to be blended all the way. If we have streaks of white where it's supposed to be darker or darker streaks where it's supposed to be lighter, that's okay. And this style of painting, I'm just going to go around my drawing. If you wanted to paint over parts of the barn, it's easier, you're welcome to. In fact, some of my sky ended up dipping down into the sheep drawing and the bush drawing, and that's okay. I'm going to go back with some more of that lighter blue. Add some of those darker colors up at the top. One thing you want to try not to do is try not to over blend it, because if you keep working this, it ends up being the same color. But if that happens, that's fine. I'm going to go back with my lighter, add some more lighter shades in there, lighter tints in there. Let that blend just a little bit, but I like a few of those streaks that are still showing. When you're done with this step, you do not need to let it dry before going on to this next step. So we are going to do the bushes next, and I used Mars Black, Brilliant Yellow Green, and Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. We'll just call them dark green, light green, and black. And I am loading those three colors onto my palette. I will be using a 12 bright brush for this, although you might find that the round brush works better for this technique. It's up to you. You don't have to use the exact brushes that I used. So I'm going to get my 3/4 rinsed off, set to the side, and 12 bright. That's that little flat brush that's about a 1/2 inch wide. I'm going to load it into just the dark green right now. Loading that just on the tip of the bristles, tip of the brush. I'm going to paint the top edges. So I'm going to kind of create that texture of that bushes, so it'd be kind of textured towards the top. So you're doing like little kind of rounded, sort of choppy strokes, painting kind of a circular direction. So a little short, rounded, sort of choppy strokes, not long strokes like what we did in the sky. And I'm just going to kind of create the edge of that bush line. When I get to the lamb, I want to stop. So if you end up painting a little bit over the ear, that's okay, because we can always paint over that later. And then we see more of that bush over here on the right. Again, same kind of rounded, sort of choppy, dabbling strokes. Then let's load our brush in the green, the light green, without rinsing it off. So our bush is lighter at the top and dark and shadowy at the bottom, and that's what we want to kind of achieve here. So we're going to take our light green and go back. This is going to blend very fast with that dark green, but that's okay. And just at the top, I'm adding that lighter green in there. If you need to even add a little bit of white to your brush to help make it lighter, you can. So you can see, I'm going to do a teeny tiny bit of white. Don't do a lot of white. It's going to look like there's snow on the bushes. Just a few little bits of that light. That white will make that light green much lighter. Just kind of blend it in. And then we can go back to our dark green and start filling in the rest of the bush. I don't want to touch that lighter color at the top. I'm still kind of letting it blend in. And then we want to work our way down towards the bottom. Just blending some of that lighter color down. I'm going to rinse off, because I'm going to introduce black into my green, and I don't want any white on my brush. It's going to look kind of weird if that white was on the brush. So we're going to mix a little bit of black into the green. It's going to make a very, very dark green, so black into dark green actually, and go back, and on the bottom, I'm going to work my way up. So that's going to create that darker, shadowy part towards the bottom. Again, same kind of like short, circular, kind of dabbling strokes. And just going around the ear and blending it up. And we have dark and shadowy at the bottom, and we have light and bright at the top. We can go around our barn. And if we need to go back and add more brightness to it later, we can. Add a little bit of that kind of medium color towards the top. And I'm going to call that good for now. It's a little saturated, so the more I blend, it may just end up kind of all being the same color. So we're going to leave it alone. And let's go ahead and do our ground next. So I'm going to load the color Yellow Oxide. This is going to give it that kind of golden green color in the landscape. And we're going to go back to our 12 or our 3/4 inch flat wash brush, the big flat brush we used in the sky. And let's mix equal parts brilliant yellow green with yellow oxide. And when I mix colors on my palette, depending on what I'm doing, a lot of times I don't mix it all the way. So I end up getting this kind of swirly effect when I paint. So it's going to look like a color that you tried to make, but you didn't blend it all the way. And I like that. So start on the back of your landscape. Our landscape is lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. That's kind of the effect that we're going for. And we're going to start. I'm using that tip of the brush. I kind of defined the far edge of that line and then kind of brought it down maybe an inch. Left and right, kind of loose strokes. I'm going to load more of that dark green on my palette too. Grab a little bit of that dark green and bring that up. So basically what we want is lighter color in the back, darker medium color towards the bottom, much darker on the very, very bottom. I took that green and I kind of blended that up into our yellow green, kind of medium sized left and right strokes, gently blending our dark green up into our medium green. And that yellow is going to make that land look kind of lighter and more golden way in the back. Just very loose left and right strokes, kind of going at a curve. It makes it look like the land is not perfectly straight, kind of makes it look a little bit hilly. And then I am painting over parts of the sheep, and that's okay. There's going to be a step where we're going to redefine the shape of our sheep and go back over any parts that we painted over, so that's okay. Taking that lighter color, kind of bringing that in. So we have pretty yellow golden green at the top. It mixes to like this medium green, and then we have that darker green at the bottom. So that's going to create some perspective in your painting. It makes it look further away where it's lighter and closer where it's darker. So we can do the same thing on the right, although you don't have to match colors perfectly from the left to the right. Just try to get it generally close. Taking that kind of pretty light golden green color. Maybe there's a few little dark green streaks of color up here at the top. Taking the darker green, gently blending it in. Grabbing some of my lighter green, very loose left and right strokes, not over blending the color. Grab some more of that yellow. I can even introduce a little bit of white into that if I wanted to. Just be careful with the white. It's going to make it kind of very, very bright and more creamy and opaque. Just gently blend that in to the landscape. Blending it down into kind of the darker area, but not over blending that color. So we have a nice variety of different greens and golden, green, yellow colors. We won't be doing any grass texture or little white flowers to this yet. That's a much later step. So when you're done, go ahead and rinse your 3/4 off, set it to the side. You're going to need your 12 bright brush again, and we're going to load the color Cadmium Red Deep Hue onto our palette. This is a really pretty dark red color. If you don't have this exact one, you can use any red that you have available. And we'll be adding black and white to it as well to create that rustic look. And go ahead, let's just start with the red for now. This entire barn is painted with vertical strokes using the full width of the brush. So you might need to take your canvas and kind of hold it at different angles to kind of achieve that. But basically, we're painting that shape of the barn with the red, and you can use the the tip of your brush on its side to really kind of define that sharp vertical line to get that line nice and crisp. I'm going to add a little bit of white to my brush for a couple of reasons. This is going to help create that color variation rustic look, but also right here where my bushes ended up going over the barn, that white is going to help that disguise it. So adding teeny tiny bits of white in there, still doing vertical strokes and letting that kind of gently blend. White's opaque, and that's going to cover up dark colors that intruded on our barn. And you're just going to paint. So right here for the ears, you can use the tip of the brush to outline the outer kind of the negative space of the ear and then go around it. But if you have to paint over parts of the ear, that's okay. That titanium white will be our best friend later on for covering up any of those colors that go over our sheep. So again, vertical strokes everywhere. So you can choose if you want to paint over the door drawing or if you want to go around it. I'm going to paint over my door drawing. Let's try to just kind of do what we drew with this horizon line and land area. That's how far down I'm going down with this. We're going to kind of assume our land is kind of hilly and kind of overlapping the bottom part of our barn. If you want to make the edge perfectly straight, you're welcome to do it that way. But I'm just going to kind of improvise for now, and I could always fix that bottom part of the barn later. Disguise that bottom part with some grass blades or something like that. Anyway, so right here where the roof is, I'm going to use the tip to outline that diagonal line, and this part is horizontal where that roof hangs over. Paint that all red, even though that's going to be black and white later on. I'm just going to paint it red for now. So again, red, using very, very tiny bits of white in there to blend it gently, but not all the way. It's going to give you that kind of rustic look. Try to make sure your strokes are all going vertical. Sometimes our strokes end up kind of swaying to the left or right, but try to make it as vertical as possible. You can kind of use the edge of your canvas as a guideline for how vertical your lines should be. So just kind of use that edge to calibrate how your lines are looking. Fill that entire shape up. So when you're done, let's go ahead and rinse the brush off. We're going to introduce black into this, but we don't want white on our brush if we're introducing black. Then we're going to get gray and it's going to get kind of messy. Little tiny amounts of black on the tip of that brush. And let's go ahead and use the tip of the brush. If you feel more comfortable doing this with a round brush, you can, but using the edge of that brush really helps. Outline that diagonal line with black, make it a little bit thick. Even though that line's going to have white on top of it later, we're still going to do it this way. Outline the horizontal line. So there's like a little triangle piece. That's solid black. So paint that little triangle that's sticking out on the left. That's solid black. And then take that and we're going to drag it down. So this is dry brush style. I am not making this look opaque. I am barely letting that brush skid the surface of the canvas. So I'm applying that dry brush black at the top where that roof part of the barn would be casting some darker shadows. But also there's a few black streaks kind of all throughout the barn area. Gives it that kind of rustic look. Again, dry brush style just means you're not loading a lot of paint on your brush. If it helps, you can wipe the brush. So you can load the black and wipe it off with like a towel. That ensures there's only a little bit of black on your brush. So I'm going to let the barn dry before doing anything else to it. And let's move on and start painting our main focus of the painting, the sheep. And I'll be using this number 4 round brush. You want to add some fresh titanium white to your palette and black if you need more black. And this is a step where you might find the Posca black paint pen useful. I'm going to use the 4 round. I'm going to pinch the bristles because I'm going to paint the eyes first, and it's a small area, so pinching the bristles helps give you better control of the brush. Load it into the black, take a deep breath, and we're going to outline the eye. So everything we drew with pencil is what I'm outlining black. Outline the outer part of the shape. So that's black, the little eyelash. If you want to exaggerate the eyelashes and create more eyelashes, you're welcome to do that. And then this is kind of a stylized sheep, not super realistic. So it's little, it has some cartoon features to it. And then the circle of the eye. If you want to paint that circle inside the eye, solid black first and then go back and add the white dot, if that's easier for you, or if it's easier for you to leave the white dot, go around the white dot, that's up to you. But I will end up, I'm not going to leave that part blank canvas. I'll go back and paint that white after this black dries. Definitely after the black dries, because then it's going to get messy if we tried to paint that white next. So same thing over here. Outline the eye, the eyelashes, the black circle. I'm going to leave the white showing and paint that white later on. Or again, you can paint it solid black and then paint white over it later. So this is why that paint pen might come in handy, or even a Sharpie. If you want to just use a black Sharpie and do that for the eye outline, you can. So there's our eyes. And then let's go ahead and rinse off our round brush, get all the black off, and we're going to use 100% solid titanium white next. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to outline, kind of go around the shape of the eye first. So right here, I'm going to paint around the eye, but not, I don't want to touch any of that black because then it's just going to drag black into this, and we don't want that. So right here, very, very thick stroke, and right here, outline those two sides. We're painting white on white, so it's not super visible on the camera, but this part right here, under part. And then what I want to do next is I want to outline the shape of my sheep here. So I can, for the most part, still see my traceable lines, and I could change and alter the shape if I wanted to, but the point of this is that any part where I painted green over, I want to use this white to disguise it. I'm not worried about shape, the texture of the sheep right now. I just want to redefine the shape. So I'm taking that white, outlining the sides, and any part of that green I might have painted over. It's going to really help to disguise that right now. So same thing with the ears. If there's any green or red over here that you painted over, go back and redefine any of that. Right here is a big blob of green over here, so I'm just going to paint that white. Okay, so next we are going to do the inner part of the ear. And for that, let's load our palette with medium magenta. Use whatever pink you have available. And still using number 4 round brush, let's mix equal parts medium magenta and white together. That's going to make a lighter pink. And we're going to start by painting the entire inner part of the ear pink. So I'm just doing like short little strokes. I can outline that inner ear shape, and then short strokes that just fill in that shape. Contouring strokes, so that just means that it's going in the direction of that shape. So solid color first, then grab just the pink. And so we want the ear to be darker on the left and darker towards the top. So I'll move my hand here. So the left part of the ear, dark, top part dark as well, and then add a very small dot of black to your brush. Take that black and just kind of outline the inner top part of the ear, maybe blend it in just a little bit towards the left, so that top curve on the inside of the ear is dark. It's going to turn kind of a grayish color because we still have white on our brush, and that's okay. So that part is dark. So we have different color shades inside the ear now. And we're going to repeat that. We're going to do the exact same thing again, but to the left part of the ear. So wipe the brush off. Start with your pink and white mixed together. So equal parts pink and white. And then paint the entire inner part of that ear. So I like to outline the shape, kind of fill it in with strokes that kind of go in the direction of that shape. If you're simplifying this tutorial, you don't have to do the shading thing with the dark and the black. You can just leave it this color and that's fine. So paint that in, and then we're going to load just the pink this time. Add the pink on the left side, just kind of drag it in, blend it gently, and on the top part as well. And then grab your little tiny dot of black. If it helps, you can just mix a little bit of black with the pink. So it's not pure black, just kind of a grayish color at the very top. Add that dark color just at the top and a little bit at the bottom. And there's our inside part of the ear. Adding a little bit more pink in there, kind of letting that blend. And next we can start painting all the wool sheep texture next. And let's go ahead and start with the clean number 4 round brush. And I'm going to mix maybe about 4 parts white, 1 part black. Does not have to be exact, just kind of a light gray color. We're going to work with a lot of grays in here because our canvas is white and we want to actually have some shadowing and texture in here. So we're going to use the black to help gray our white and make different shades. So starting at the ear, and I'm painting in these kind of small circles. There's not a whole lot of wool texture on the ears, but we can do a little bit just to kind of practice and just filling in that. The paint is being applied relatively thickly, and I'm loading that paint just on the tip of the brush. So there's that. Paying attention to the edges, making sure that it overlaps the barn where it needs to really define that shape, where it needs to overlap the bushes as well. A little bit of black. So as I'm applying this and mixing, so right here I'm going to start doing the wool on the top of the head, doing the edge outline first. See that circular strokes, letting that black and white sort of gently blend together. And I'm going to do the other ear. So really defining that top edge, small little circular strokes. If you wanted to paint fast circles, you can do that. Again, there's not a whole lot of texture on the ear. I can paint the ear smooth if I wanted to with smoother strokes. Down here, this would be smooth. And then down here would be smooth. Make sure that's all defined. Just take your time, and then we can continue on the rest of the top of his head. Again, circular strokes. Ended up with a few extra wool textures right there on the top of his ear. And right here, see, big circular strokes, start filling it in. We're going to do those circle strokes down to like where that line is, that wavy line right there. So circular strokes. Just be really careful not to add too much black. So if it's dark right here, we can always go back over that and add more white to it to lighten it up. I'm going to add more white to my palette. There's our white. So right here, this part is going to be smooth, angled strokes. The bridge of his nose is. So this fluffy above that line, kind of below this line, very loose, angled. So it's angling downwards between the eyes to his nose, and it contours around the eye. So remember we did that one white kind of paint stroke around the eye. That's how it's contouring. So this one's going down, just doing sketch-like strokes right here. It curves outwards. Right here it curves outwards and around the eye. So this is its area of the face. The wool textures not very much wool texture here. It's just flat. So we want to paint that area with flatter strokes. I'm just doing sketch-like strokes around the nose and the mouth. I don't want to lose that part of the drawing, so I'm just going very lightly in that area under the eyes here. And then let's go ahead and rinse, and let's do our nose and mouth before we lose that drawing. So let's, with the black, outline the mouth. So whatever you see for the pencil line, go ahead and outline that. And then a little bit of an opening of the bottom part of his mouth. And then a little nostril goes down, little nostril. So that's just outlining the part that was traced onto the canvas. And let's go ahead and make a very, very light pink. So lighter than that first color we painted inside the ear. Make it actually a little bit darker. So this part of the nose I am painting pink. So just little tiny sketch marks. Fill in the shape of the nose. Kind of curves down a little bit. I wiped my brush off and grabbed white. I'm just going to do little fur marks, little sketch marks just above the nose. I ended up dragging some pink in there, but that's okay. And then I took a little bit of white, kind of added more right here. Ended up dragging a little streak of black in there, but I can fix that later. Touch up his nostrils. We're going to paint the chest area next, and let's get kind of the same kind of gray we did towards the top of his head. The chest area needs to be a little bit darker. It's more shadowy down there. So we're going to do this on purpose. We're going to purposefully paint this darker. It's kind of almost a dark, medium to dark gray. And under his chin, kind of outline that to define that. All this area is dark, circular strokes, but you can use smooth strokes to kind of help you outline that area. So it creates contrast when this is dark and the chin area is light, so it kind of divides those two parts together so it's not meshed into one of the same color. So again, circle strokes, filling this in, painting just nothing but circles. And then we can bring this down even further. You don't have to use that same shade of darker gray. You can add lighter color into it. So I painted just the chest area, and then we can do the outer areas, so the back and the right part. I loaded more white on my palette, and again, circular strokes, thick circle strokes. It's almost like you're just scribbling while you're filling this in, but you're doing circles. There's still a little bit of gray on my brush, so even though this is kind of the lighter part of our sheep, it's going to look almost pure white, but there's a few little bits of gray in there. In fact, if we want, we can even grab little bits of black. And just a little bit. You don't want too much because, again, the darker, more shadowy part should be under his chin and in the front part of the chest area. This part should be lighter. So you want to keep that in mind. And then same here. I'm going to add a few more swirly dark pieces down here. So you can just kind of have fun with this. And go back with the white. With that white, gently blend, but not all the way. Really create some pretty wool texture. And then still a little bit of green kind of showing through right here. I can add a second layer in there to kind of disguise that. Circled strokes, try not to over blend it, because if you over blend it, it's going to end up, you're going to lose the texture. It's going to look all the same color. go back, kind of add more to the face. Make sure the face area stays relatively smooth in terms of your strokes right here. And right there, kind of added more white. I'm going to paint the parts of the eye that were not painted yet. So like this, the white part, this is just canvas here. I want to go in there. Assuming that black is dry, I just painted like just that white part right there too. It ended up being a teeny tiny bit gray because I did not rinse my brush off, and that's okay. And right there, little circles inside of his eye, little highlight. I just went back with a white dot using just the tip of the brush and painted that over. And lost a little bit of outline in my eye, but that's okay. We can always go back over that. I'm going to rinse the black off. I'm just going to go in and kind of add more of these smooth strokes. So you can decide if you need to do this or not, but I'm just adding some lighter color in here. And some more smooth strokes on the left and the right. These line strokes kind of contour the bridge of his nose and then go around the eye. And then kind of a second layer of the wool towards the top of the head. The ear, kind of defining that bottom part of the ear a little bit more. Second coat in that area. That part is smooth. A little bit more circle texture strokes at the top where that part was kind of dark, but I'm adding kind of a lighter layer up there. Up here on the top part of his ear. And then over here on his back, adding a few kind of circular strokes. And then right here, make that part just a little bit thicker. Let's be done with the sheep for now. We can always decide to go back and maybe add some more wool texture, but let's go ahead and finish up our barn. And so I'm on the top of the roof right now with white, number 4 round brush and titanium white. I am outlining this top piece, so this part is white. It has that white edging. So outline, but I'm not covering all the black. There's still a slither of black line there. I don't want to lose that. For the door, if you want to, you can draw the door in with a piece of chalk real quick, pencil. I'm just going to use my ruler to help me paint this in. I'm using the ruler to help me get this line to be horizontal. And so the top part of the barn door is actually level with the top part of the lamb's ear. So I can line that up. And that is about 1.5 inches wide. And then I can do my vertical line. So I can take my ruler, just be careful not to smudge the paint, and then line that up to the edge of the canvas so I get a perpendicular, a nice vertical line. And there's my just kind of a thick white line. And then I can kind of estimate how this is going to look. So I can do an X, but the X is not going all the way to the other side because there's 2 doors or 2 X's, but we only see the full of the one on the left. So I can do another vertical line, and then there's that other line, and then that one. And then we can do making these a little bit thicker. Then we can do the top window. So the bottom line needs to line up with the bottom edge of that roof. So we'll do a little horizontal line, and then we can kind of estimate where the vertical line is using the ruler to help guide my lines, but without putting the ruler on the canvas because it would smudge. There's that. You can rinse this off, grab my 12 bright, and paint the inside of that solid black. Just dragging my brush to paint that in. If we want, you can do like a black line right there at the top, black line on the left. There's already a black line kind of inside the door from when we painted it earlier. So that's it for the barn. If you want to get more detailed with the barn, you can, but I left it like that, simple. I do want to add some more detail in the bushes, specifically with our lighter green color. So this is brilliant yellow green, and I'm using the number 4 round brush. So at the very, very top edge of those bushes, I'm adding this layer of bright green. And some of this is actually hanging over and creating new shape. It's like going from that green that's already there, kind of upwards, overlapping parts of that sky. So kind of making the bushes higher. But anyway, this is going to give it that really pretty bright green glow just along the front of the top part of the bushes. And we can have some of that kind of go down. Small rounded strokes, almost the same texture as the wool on our sheep. Gives it just a pretty spring green glow. We can bring some down, but we don't want to lose a dark shadowy area on the bottom, so I'm not going to touch that right now. Next, I want to kind of focus on that land that meets the barn area. Just going to kind of redefine this green sort of uneven land area, and it kind of dips up above the base of the barn. Then I'm going to drag my brush upwards to create these little grass lines that kind of overlap the base of the barn area. And it kind of helps with that transition of that green land with the barn. And then I can perhaps paint some more little green grass pieces. These must be really long pieces of grass if they're way back here. But those kind of help with the transition of that green land with the bushes, just a few little diagonal strokes. I'm just using the brilliant yellow green color. So if you don't like that look, if you want to just keep the land area simple, you don't have to do these little detailed steps that I'm showing you with the land. There are little flower dots kind of all throughout this. So if I can wipe the brush off and grab a little bit of white, I can paint little dots kind of all throughout. So far away, there would be little dots, but some of them that are kind of closer to the bottom, we can actually paint little 5-petal flowers. So we can just take that brush and kind of drag little petal shapes. So just scattered throughout the landscape, gives it some interesting little texture. I'm going to paint some higher grass blades on the bottom of the canvas. So I'm going to load some more darker green on my palette, rinse my brush off, grab that green, kind of twist the brush because I know that I'm going to paint some thinner strokes here. So with these grass blades, I'm using mostly the tip of the brush, loosely just kind of dragging that up, kind of adding just a teeny bit of black in there just to darken this because it's already a dark color down here and this isn't really showing up. So adding that little bit of black kind of helped, but very loosely, thin down with just a little bit of water, just using the tip of the brush, gently dragging those up, different angles. Over here on the left, none of this grass is overlapping the sheep. I didn't want to mess any of that up, so he's in front of the grass or the grass could be in front of him, but there's none overlapping. We're not really sure, but I didn't want to do overlapping. You can grab a little bit of that lighter color, that brilliant yellow green, add some kind of medium pieces, kind of in the middle part of the land. So the grass blades technically would get smaller the further away they are, kind of more spread out. So not filling the entire landscape with grass blades, that would take forever, but just a few patches here and there of little bunches of grass pieces, kind of all throughout the landscape. We can do a few more little bright green down here within, even though it's supposed to be darker, but we can add some lighter in there as well. Gives it some pretty contrast. And I can do a few more kind of bigger flowers throughout the landscape. Just taking my brush and using the tip of the brush to paint the little bigger petals, but just kind of dragging each stroke to create the shape. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint Gentle Barn. Hope you enjoyed this painting. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.